Hey y'all, I need just to take a few minutes here to help you to understand how you're going to write the fourth kind of free response question that you're going to be expected to write when you take the exam on May 3rd. This one's called the Supreme Court Comparison free response question. So what I want to do is to walk you through how to do it, give you a quick example at the end. This way you'll be ready when you come to class next. So 7th period for you, that'll be next Tuesday. 2nd period for you, that'll be next Wednesday. The very first thing we're going to do at the beginning of class is to work on a practice one, okay? So what is this all about? First of all, please notice it is worth 4 points. And the idea is pretty simple. They're going to give you an actual Supreme Court case. Now, it is not going to be one of the 15 required Supreme Court cases that you're expected to know about. It's going to be a different one. And you're going to write an answer comparing and or contrasting the one they give you with one of the 15 required ones that's relevant. So the two cases will be about the same constitutional issue. So the FRQ, technical details, is worth 4 points. First, they will ask you to identify either a similarity or a difference between the two Supreme Court cases, the one they give you, and then the one of the 15 that you in your mind know is similar. But what's a similarity, or maybe what's a difference? Second point, it says provide prompted information from the specified Supreme Court case. So you'll have to provide information about the one of the 15 required ones that you know is similar. You'll have to provide information about it. Third, explain how or why that information is relevant to the second source, the Supreme Court case that they give you. How is the information that you're talking about from one of the 15 required cases, how is it relevant in terms of connecting it to the one they've given you? And then fourth, describe or explain an interaction between the holding, the ruling, in the non-required Supreme Court case, the one they give you, and a relevant political institution, behavior, or process. I know that one's vague, just when we get to the example, you'll see, it's not that hard. So here's an example. Quote, Deborah Morse was the principal of Douglas High School in Juneau, Alaska, where students were allowed to attend the 2002 Olympic torch relay outside of the school. At the school's supervised event, Joseph Frederick held up a banner with the message, Bong hits for Jesus, a slang reference to marijuana smoking. Morse, so that's the principal, took away the banner and suspended Frederick for 10 days. Morse justified her actions by citing the school's policy against the display of material that promotes the use of illegal drugs. In the ensuing case, Morse v. Frederick, the Supreme Court held in a 5-4 decision that although students do have some rights, even while in school, these rights do not extend to pro-drug messages that may undermine the school's important mission to discourage drug use. In ruling for Morse, the court affirmed that the speech rights of public school students are not as extensive as those adults normally enjoy. Because schools may take steps to safeguard those entrusted to their care, the school officials in this case did not violate the Constitution by confiscating the pro-drug banner and suspending Frederick. So guys, that is an example of the case that they will give you. In this case, it's Morse v. Frederick. This is not one of the 15 you're required to know about, but what you should be doing right now is thinking to yourself, okay, which one of the 15 required cases that I have learned about seems similar? And if you've been paying attention, you should already be thinking one. Tinker. So, here's what they might ask you. So part A, identify the constitutional provision that is common in both Morse and Tinker. Hey, there you go. See, in this one, they actually gave it to you. They're not normally going to do that. Normally, you will have to think of one of the 15 required ones that matches or that is similar. B, based on the constitutional provision identified in Part A, explain why the facts of Tinker led to a different holding, a different ruling than the holding in Morse. And then C, describe an action that members of Congress, see, so here's a different institution. Describe an action that members of Congress who disagree with the holding in Morse, what could they do to limit its impact? So step A, identify the constitutional provision that is common in both of those two cases. Maybe your answer would be both Morse v. Frederick and Tinker v. Des Moines addressed the constitutional provision, notice I'm using the prompt in my answer, addressed the constitutional provision of free speech. And don't stop there, because it says identify the constitutional provision. The constitutional provision of free speech as outlined in the First Amendment. Tell me where in the Constitution free speech is. It's in the First Amendment. See, that wasn't that hard, right? Part B. Based on the provision identified in Part A, so free speech, First Amendment, explain why the facts of Tinker led to a different ruling, a different holding than Morse. Why did the court rule in favor of the students in Tinker, but rule against the student in Morse? Maybe you write this. In Tinker, students who wore black armbands in protest to Vietnam War policies had their rights to political speech upheld by the court. The justices said that students retain their constitutional right to freedom of speech while in public schools. That's all true. In Morse, the students were not exercising political speech, but were instead promoting a pro-drug message, which the school has a compelling interest to prevent. Remember, it was part of their mission to help students, it said in the facts of the case, it was part of their mission to help students understand that drugs are dangerous. Political speech may be protected, but not speech that encourages drug use. Yeah, so their argument here is that talking about drugs and how great they are is not quote-unquote political speech and therefore is not protected. C, describe an action that members of Congress who disagree with the ruling in Morse could take to limit the ruling's impact. How simple is this? Congress could pass a law that specifically expands students' rights to speech on campus, including political speech or all forms of symbolic speech. So what could Congress do if they disagreed with the Supreme Court's ruling? They could pass a law expanding students' right to free speech. That was pretty easy, right? So first of all, guys, in order to answer this FRQ in May, you have to know the 15 required cases inside and out. You really have to know them. And especially you have to understand the facts of the case. What was the case about? And as always, make sure you do what the verb tells you to do. So if you get identify, that's not the same thing as describe. Describe is not the same thing as explain. Do what they ask you to do. Okay, so again, when you come into class next, whether it's Tuesday or Wednesday, the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to do a practice FRQ. Okay, so if you have any questions about this presentation, feel free to email me over the weekend, all right? See you guys next week.